We now going to have one last presentation before we break up for the tea. And
So Guardsquare is the global reference in mobile app protection.
okay.
And when I say global reference, I mean global reference because we are in that market since a very long time, as you can see on this chart. So the journey started in 2001 with the launch of our open source product, ProGuard. That product was developed to make apps smaller and faster. In those days, it was very important because the smartphones were not that powerful. So it was very important that the apps which were just starting to be released were able to run on these machines. So that's why our CTO launched that product to make sure that these apps were able to be used on these phones. And that product was good and selected by Google and placed by default in their Android SDK. So that's where the journey starts, and we were okay. It didn't generate revenue because it was an open source product, but it allows us to collect a lot of information from the market and experience and feedback. And based on that feedback and all the information we got from the users, because they were very numerous, we decided to launch in 2012 a product which was focusing more on the security, and that's where DexGuard was launched. So that was even before the start of the Guardsquare company, which was launched in 2014. So it was under another entity. And then after the launch of Guardsquare, that was followed in 2016 by the product IXGuard, which was a product launched to protect mobile apps on iOS. And more recently, we also launched a monitoring tool called Threatcast, which is monitoring all the threats which are occurring on the apps during the use. So this is in the timelines on all the product launches that we occurred. So that's a bit the story of Guardsquare. Now, let me start by saying, before I dig into the why mobile app protection is so important, that first of all, what we see today is that the race to customer loyalty is really key for the moment. We see a lot of startups bringing solutions on the market to tackle very specific and very touchy subjects, and they are able to gain a lot of customers. And then on the other hand, you see the large corporations who have to do their utmost to retain their customer base and to make their brand still aware and their customer base still loyal. And all that loyalty stuff, it's really going on, especially in the mobile market. So you see a shift from the, let's say, desktop or web towards mobile, and that's where the big fight for customer loyalty is going on. Even especially today, it was already a very significant trend, but even today in the Corona COVID period, that's even going faster. Because why in the mobile field? Because we see that all the traffic which is going on on the digital side, that a lot of that traffic is now going via mobile. Also, not only traffic, but also transactions. So 58% of all the transactions are now done via mobile devices. And that also the usage as such of mobile devices is increasing rapidly and is now 200% more in use than desktop solutions. So we see that there is definitely a very strong increase in the use of mobile applications. So if you want to retain your customers or gain new customers, it's on that market that you have to be very active. Now, to win a loyalty race requires, of course, that you have a product on that market, but also that your customer experience is right. That you really have to be careful that what you bring as a mobile application is appealing to the customers, because studies have shown that if your customer experience on that, specifically on that market, is right, then you will able to grow your revenue much faster than your competitors, up to 8%. That your profit will be much more sustainable, so that you will be able to build on that experience to increase and keep your company profitable, and that your company lifetime value will be much higher than that of your detractors. And last but not least, that you will be seen as a loyalty leader, because you have a very good people have a very good experience with your product, and they don't see any reason to change, and on the contrary, they will just highlight the fact that they are very pleased with your solution. So definitely, it's very important that your customer experience is right. This being said, if your customer experience is not right, then you will face serious issues. First of all, if your application is not smooth enough, then you will face some disinterest of the users of that product. To start with, if your solution is not fast enough, their studies have shown that people will look for alternatives to your product. But then, of course, if your product is perceived as not secure, when the product is hacked or when there is news about it in market, then of course the damage can hardly be overseen, because that's really, really dramatic, and that's where people from one day to another will stop using that product and will move to another solution. So can you imagine that all the investments you've placed in that mobile app can be destroyed in one effort? And that's very significant, because if you see how many efforts and how many revenue companies are investing, studies show that small and medium-sized enterprises invest yearly 12% of their revenue into mobile application solutions. So that's good, because they understood that that's where the money lays, and that's where market has to be gained. On the other hand, if you invest all that money in that medium, you better be sure that it's also secure and it's not broken. So that's why it's very important. And again, if you face your fraud or hacking, of course it will damage your image. So what we see in reality, if we go over the timeline, when web applications were there, home banking and other solutions, we saw an increase in the use of these solutions going together with the increase of protection. Of course, it was server based, so companies were always very sensitive to protect their servers, and that was going along with the increased use of web applications. So we see that the darker gray curve is following quite closely the more lighter gray, which is showing the number of transactions. Now, when we see the other part is representing the mobile app transactions, there we see a very steeper increase, and the orange shows that over a few years the usage of mobile apps has been increasing exponentially, and it continues to do that way. But what we see is that protection didn't follow. and that's of course worrying, because when we know how fraud is operating, they look for where is the biggest market and what is the easiest to attack. And there we see that the market of mobile applications, the transactions in these is nearly reaching the same volume as the web-based applications, or because these are not the latest figures, so we can think that it will be more at the same level, but that protection is not there at the same level. So of course it will attract a lot of fraud, and with all the repercussions that we can imagine, and that's why it is very important to really protect these applications, because it's not a matter. This graph, the previous graph has shown that it's not if it's going to happen, but when it's going to happen. Because if you see now these days, 71% of all the fraud which is occurring is mobile. So that's a big part for the reasons I just explained. If we analyze the mobile applications, we see that 75% do not pass basic security checks. So that's also quite worrying. That we've also seen in end of 2018, but that only increased in 2019, that we saw financial Trojans increase with 200%. So these are really software which is malware installed to spy and act upon the application while it is running. And then last but not least, there has always also been an incredible increase of fake applications by 650%. So that's also very, very worrying. And it's not only because I hear often people say, yeah, but it's true for Android. There we face issues, but today it's also happening in the iOS world. So for the 10 applications, Android applications, which are hacked, 6 iOS applications are hacked. So it's increasing significantly. Because of that market, it also increased significantly. And also something which we need to say is that it's not only happening, it's also happening to the big brands, because that's where the money lays often. And of course, if you can break into a very popular application which is used for streaming or things like that, then of course you can generate a lot of publicity or generate even a lot of revenue out of that. So that's definitely why a company should invest in that security. But how come that it's not happening right now? Well, it's fairly simple. Is that on one hand, it's a fast growing market, so time is really very important. You need to go fast, to put as much as possible into that application to keep it competitive. We said the customer experience, but which incorporates also the services you can offer. So you have the user experience, the different services that you provide, performance. So it's a lot of things you have to take into account. And then because of the time constraints and all the things you have to develop, often there is not enough time. And as we know that the mobile app developers are not necessarily the security experts, they need to get that information elsewhere. Often that's the last part which is overlooked or didn't was not looked upon, and that's why solutions are not as secure as they should be, because of the time and investment. And these things are only getting worse because mobile apps are yeah, have to be more and more sophisticated, have to have more and more services. So these apps are getting bigger, um, and they attract more users. So it's even more important that they get secured, and there is often uh, not time which has been allocated on these topics. So again, very important for your customer experience that your app is protected and secured. Now, if we see on the market, because okay, luckily people and companies, they start to be aware that something has to be done, and then they look onto what should be done, and then some companies say, okay, I think it is safe. I will do it my way, and then of course there will be no impact on time to market of your application. So because you will hardly do anything, so that will not impact the time to market. It will not impact your app size, so speed will be still be there, and but of course, yeah, the compliances will not be met, and the protection will be bad. And a word on the compliance, we see more and more compliances coming along, PCI, PSD2. So these are just a few of the GDPR can also influence that, so that we see more and more international compliances coming along, and imposing a stronger, okay, imposing, it's not that strong yet, it's not a mandate, but they push strongly towards higher security and higher protection. Then a second type of products that you can find on the market are the wrappers. So there you can send your mobile app to a company who is then wrapping, as it says, a kind of a layer of protection around it. Of course, that will less impact the market than stronger protection solutions, because it's just a layer that you put around it. But of course, it will have some impact because it will be put around your application. So that's not, I would say, not very from a size app size point of view, not so positive, and it will have an impact on the speed for the same reasons. And as it is just a thin layer, the impact on compliance will be better, of course, than not doing nothing, but you will still be very vulnerable to attacks. And also, let me say one word there is that you need to ship your full application to a third party who will then wrap something around it. Now, are you willing to do that? You have invested so much in that application, which is really key for your customer, for your future success, your revenue wise as well. So that would you send them that full application to a third party for them to put a layer around it? I think it's very risky. And then we have solutions which are a bit more stronger. Let's say some solutions are protecting the app when it is stored in the store, in the store. Then so that's what we call static protection. And then you have also solutions who are protecting the app when it is downloaded and when it is used on a phone, an iPhone or a smartphone in general. And of course, that's what we call dynamic protection. Of course, these solutions are have an impact because they require a bit more configuration. They will also influence the size and the speed. But of course, your compliance will be, your impact on compliance will be better, and your protection will be higher. And then you have the combination, which is the strongest way to protect, is to combine these static and dynamic protection, so that you have a protection of the app when it is stored and protection of the application when it is running on devices. Of course, that has with the solutions which are generally available on the market, it has an impact on time to market, on size and on speed, but you will have a strong protection and you will be compliant. But there also, we at Guardsquare, we say, okay, there is, in our opinion, no need to compromise. We think that you can go for a strong solution, um, and while not, let's say, compromising on your time to market, app size, and app speed. And we think that our products are really meeting these requirements by, first of all, providing premium security. So by combining these, as I mentioned, static and dynamic protection, that will make it stronger, also by using different ways of protecting. Every new release has a different approach. So some things will be protected, will be hidden, will be transformed in a different way, so that there is no pattern hackers could analyze out of that. It is also agnostic, Android, iOS, and it is also in your hands. So it is a product which is shipped, and you can your company can implement what is needed, because of course there are a lot of features. Not everything is always needed. Then of course, it's not by bringing more protection to the applications that it necessarily has to be bigger and slower. As you've seen in the beginning of the presentation, we have a long experience in making apps smaller and faster. And that's, of course, that technique will be even more relevant now that we add layers of protection. So even if by adding protection, you tend to increase the app and in size and decrease the app in speed, by using our techniques of optimization, we are very confident, and we can guarantee that your app will be faster and smaller. So that, while being very strongly protected. So that's really a very strong commitment that can be made. And then last but not least, it's, you build it on your own terms. So if you are pressed by time, but you faced a pen test which was not successful, you need to do something to your app, but you are very tight by time. So by using our product, by having it in your control, you can decide what you are going to implement as a strong protection, and then you will probably first go for the remarks that came out of that report or that audit. Say, okay, that needs to be done, and then you will start by doing that, and then on the next release, when you have more time, or you can already prepare, what are the other topics you want to cover, the other protection features you want to use, because you always have to know that you have to be ahead of the hacking community. But that's something that you can do in a phase. You can plan it, you can organize it, so that it's all in your hands, and you can define your own priorities. So that, I think it's also very important that you have that opportunity in your hands to do yourself. So that's in a nutshell why we think at Guardsquare there is no need to compromise, and you can go for a very strong protection, not impacting the size and the speed of your application, and do that at your own path, and following the internal policy that you have on security. So I think the app experience, as I've shown, the app experience overall is important, and that when the app is hit by fraud or by hacking, it's a very dangerous, and it will be very negative. The impact will be very negative, not only for fraud or revenue perspective, but also your reputation, and to have a peace of mind there, knowing that there is strong protection available, and that it will not impact that experience is I think very important to be at peace with the full development, and to make sure that you you will continue to be able to generate money and attract new customers and keep the existing customers for your application. So that's what I wanted to tell you about the mobile app protection and how it is impacting in a positive way the overall app experience. Thank you for your attention.